What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through Scale Up Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. You're going to want to listen to this episode today. I interview Sam Fenton-Elstone, who is the co-founder and CEO of Anything is Possible, and there's so much to listen out for here. They're in the media, creative and technology space, which is a very competitive market space, but they've carved out a really strong position, and they've grown over the last 5 years to 50 people. So from a standing start to 50 people, £5 million in turnover. They're looking to open up their third and fourth offices very shortly. So they've grown very rapidly. And I want you to listen out to how clearly Sam can articulate what makes them different from the other agencies that are out there, and also how clearly he can articulate the source of their competitive advantage. And I think that's really key. And we talk quite a lot about strategy and culture. Sam keeps coming back to those things. It's clear that they've got a lot right in their strategy, very, very clever. And they're also very focused on culture. In fact, so much so that their fundamental belief is anything is possible, which they've made the name of their company. And it flows through everything that they do, right through from recruitment to how they manage the team and the business and how they deal with clients. So it's absolutely fundamental, built in and embedded and ingrained in everything that they do. So I want you to have a real listen out, some great insights, great advice from somebody that's built a business from nothing to 50 people within a 5-year period, including that time over lockdown. And actually, I wanted to listen out to his approach as to how they handled the pandemic. So let me not spoil any more. Let's go straight over and listen to the rest of the story from Sam. Welcome to another episode of Scale Up Radio. And today I'm here with Sam Fenton-Elstone, who is the co-founder and CEO of Anything is Possible. So Sam, welcome to Scale Up Radio.
Thank you, Kevin. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, lovely to have you on. I'm definitely looking forward to finding all about what you do. So anything is possible. There's not much of a clue there in terms of what you actually do. So what's it all about?
Yeah, good question. So we are a marketing agency that specializes in using media, creative and technology to help businesses grow. So we have a core belief that actually you can transform your business growth through those three elements. And typically there are elements that businesses have challenges with. So there are lots of different agencies. I think I saw a stat the other day, there's 30,000 agencies in the UK.
Marketing type agencies.
Yeah. Related to marketing, communications, digital. So there's lots of agencies out there. But I've worked in the agency space for 15 or so years. And our position is that we don't think any of them really deal with the blend of media and creative and technology well enough for clients. And it's a world that brands often struggle with. So that's what we do. We've been around we launched business in 2018.
Okay.
in the olden days before COVID.
BC, yeah.
Yeah, BC, yeah. I don't know if we'd known about what was coming, whether we'd have done it or not. I think we would have, but it was just, it's funny to think back to then,
Yeah.
And anything is possible. It's the name. It's a real belief in our business. So, we coin it that the world is a better place when you remember anything is possible. And it's a way that we see the world. So, when you're a kid, right? Anything is possible. So, in 1 week of a kid's life, you could be an astronaut, a fireman, a milkman, a footballer.
Yeah.
And when you see the world through that level of possibility, it's an inspiring, exciting, and ever expanding place. And then we become old and miserable and we start to make excuses for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so our philosophy, our belief is that we want to kind of rekindle that spirit a little bit.
Brilliant.
And that's how we solve problems for clients. Great.
And I heard an example as well that reinforces that just the other day. If you go into a nursery school with 3-year-olds and you say who can sing, they all put their hands up. If you go into a school of 13-year-olds and say who can sing, you might get 1 or 2 because we've added all of those constraints around. Well, actually, I can't sing well, or I'm embarrassed about it, or whatever it is. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm going to steal that story. I'm going to take that. So I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great example.
And you've coined this phrase or this word really of possibilists, haven't you? Or
yes, yeah. So possibilists and possibilism. So it's every agency like something like that. So we're all possibilists. It's a little bit cheesy, but actually there's real meaning in it. So a pessimist would say that their glass is half empty. An optimist would say it's half full. A possibilist just fills it straight up to the top.
Yeah.
And the idea is that, this is important for us actually, because we look for these traits in the people that we recruit and the brands that we work with. The idea is that you need to be able to see a better future, but also have the commitment and the ambition to go and make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think, it's very easy to have a few pints down the pub and talk about how you could do something better. And it's really hard to actually do it. And that's the spirit we try and get. And it's something that we hold ourselves to account by. So we've got a set of, 8 behaviors that support that. And the best people that come into the business, are possibilists. And, we'd like there to be more possibilists in the world, actually, because I think if more people could take that approach, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
Like from marketing agency to say that, but I think, you could apply it to all walks of life. And yeah, definitely the clients that we work with and the brands that we work with, we look for that trait. And when we get that match right, it works really, really well.
Brilliant. So you've kind of taken almost really from a core values perspective, core behaviors, you develop those out and you look for those in your recruitment, and you also keep people accountable. So how do you keep people accountable to those behaviors then ongoing?
Yeah, so it's somewhat, it's got to be self-managing, right? So it can't be dictatorial and this is what positivism looks like. Everyone has to hold each other to account and make sure that we are embracing the spirit of being a positivist. So we kind of have a cultural focus on highlighting strengths of what it would be to embody that spirit. So we often tell stories. I think stories are just such a wonderful tool in marketing, in all communication, but in marketing communications, to bring people on board and to bring people on a journey and to generate behavior change or an action. Marketing is really all about stories anyway, right? So, and so often we'll talk about, examples of possibilists in the world, so a great example, one I often talk about is, who Dick Fosbury is? So he's the high jumper, and unfortunately he recently passed away. And he was one of our original possibilists. And we talk about Dick Fosbury in pitches, in how we talk about our brand. And with high jump, and I don't know how much you know about how we know who he is, but prior to Dick Fosbury coming along, high jump, it actually had, a number of different approaches, believe it or not. So if you'd watched the Olympics, I think it was back in the 50s, some people would take one approach to the bar and others would take a completely different approach. But interestingly, though, despite there being different techniques and approaches, the world record had basically plateaued because the way we were doing it was, we've reached maximum effectiveness. And then Dick Fosbury came along and he kind of looked at the problem in a possibilist mentality and kind of reinvented it. And that's when you see this curved run up and you see the arching of the back and approaching the bar backwards. And suddenly from that point, now you watch the Olympics and you see high jump and everyone's doing the same approach. And if you look at the progression of high jump, it's exponential growth since then. And so stories like that, you can apply that sort of lesson to business and to marketing. It's not about just necessarily looking for the incremental gains. They have a huge role to play, incremental performance gains. It's really, really important. But sometimes you've got to reimagine the problem or the challenge or the opportunity and pull it apart a little bit, see a completely different perspective. And sometimes when you do that, actually growth can be exponential. And that's kind of how we look at the challenges our clients give us.
Yeah, that's a really nice example because believe it or not, I used to do the high jump when I was at school. Oh, there you go. So as you say, up until that point, people were basically either straddling it, so they from the side and doing kind of a left leg over and then right leg over sort of straddle, or they were going over on their front over it, weren't they before then? So I had the embarrassing distinction that at the county championships, the person that won it warmed up at the height that I went out at. So,
if you're going to be beaten by someone, he was representing England at the time, but he was. It wasn't like there was a small gap between us; there was an enormous gap. But that happens. But what you see, and what I love about that example is when somebody, whether it's a person or an organisation, starts to create something really effective, that the market follows, right?
Yeah.
And what was once out there as a singular, standard bearer of quality, then the rest of it follows, and that's a really good lesson.
And there's countless examples like that in sport, actually, aren't there? Like Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. Up until that point, people didn't believe it was possible to break the 4-minute mile. Once he broke it, then other people believe it, and then they work to do it as well. Yeah,
exactly. Because we have self-limiting. We self-limit ourselves. Coming back to the point around, when you get old and miserable and you make excuses. It's easy to limit your potential. And so that's the culture that we try to stimulate, and it's one which is interesting for people because it's not necessarily always the same as from where they places they worked in the past, and where maybe it's a little bit more regimented or a little bit more process oriented. We're actually asking people to be quite autonomous in the way that they approach problems and challenges, but within a framework for how they can get to good solutions.
Okay. Excellent. So you started in 2018.
Yeah.
Can you give us a feel for the size of the business now and whatever sort of terms you like? Because I know you've grown quite rapidly, both in turnover and headcount and everything. So can you give us a feeling as to where you are?
Yeah. So 2018, myself and Mark, who's my co-founder, we founded it in the shed in the bottom of my garden.
Mm-hmm.
Which was great. It was a wonderful summer. My roses looked fantastic. So that was great. And then we got onto a thing called the NatWest Accelerator program, which, there's various different regional things like that, and Barclays do one. But that was a great moment for us because they were able to get some office space and some support through that. And that was a kicker, really, I think, which enabled us to scale. So now, 5 years on, we're about 50 people. We're spread over Brighton, which is where I'm based. We've got an office in London as well. And this year we're in the process of opening an office in South Africa. Wow. And we're looking to open in the US as well. So, we do media planning and buying, creative services and tech consultancy, and we have some products as well. So we manage around £35 million in media on behalf of our clients, and our kind of fee level, which is agency kind of turnover, I suppose, is around the 5 million mark.
Nice. That's pretty stellar growth in that in that period. obviously, I guess you would. I was going to ask you what do you put that down to, but maybe it's your possibilist approach. Is what you'd say. But
yeah, I'd like to, the media space was, and the agency space, as I said, that we felt was ripe for disruption and challenging. And one of the things that was lacking is transparency. So the way we work with our clients is fully transparent. So they can see how their budget is spent, they can have control over that, and we enable them to take more ownership of the process. And the level of ownership that brands want to take or clients want to take varies. But so we can adapt to that depending on how sophisticated they are or what priorities they have and that sort of thing. But that empowerment, I think, is important for brands, particularly like, when you're going through economic situations which are challenging because you want to feel in control. But the second thing is effectiveness, right? So the work, you should engage our brand and your business should grow, basically. And so one of the proudest things that we achieved since then was being awarded the IPA effectiveness accreditation. So the IPA, which is it's kind of like the standard bearer for agencies in the UK and globally, really. They independently audited agencies, and as I mentioned, there are 30,000 in the UK, but there are only 19 that have this accreditation. And we were the youngest agency by far. We sit on that list alongside businesses like Media Company, who I think employ 14,000 people. And that assessment was really based on, does the work that we do for clients have a material impact on their business? And it does. So that, I think, has enabled us to grow and retain clients, which is really important. We work with clients that we started working with when we first started the business, that's 5 years, and then reach into different brands and different sectors and that sort of thing. So that's all of the growth has been organic, really.
Excellent. No, that's phenomenal. So, yeah, so one of 19 agencies in the UK with that accreditation, and it clearly sounds like you are disrupting the marketplace in the way that you're doing things with the empowerment aspect. Is there anything around how do you make money? Is there anything different around that from a traditional agency?
It's interesting that when we first launched the business, we had performance elements built into our fees, and we still do in some cases. We always, because it came to the point where we're like, well, let's put our money where our mouth is, basically. But actually, it never proved to be as popular as we thought, because actually, when clients trust you and know you, that it's less of an issue. But the key thing is on the transparency, so you can see exactly where your fee and your budget is going. So once you've got that, you can understand, you have a more grown-up conversation because you can attribute it to value. And as much as possible, we want to align what we get paid with the value that we bring a brand, because otherwise, once you're at that point in a relationship, it's consultative and collaborative. It's not transactional. If you're trying to sell a service, it's, and that just opens up, different opportunities to work with brands. So that's typically how we work. Agencies tend to work in models which is, basically resources based. So you sell time. Sometimes you transact on media buying, and media buying you tend to, there's percentages of the budgets and that sort of thing, but it all attributes back to time. One of the things we found in the business, in like a goal was to connect and automate everything we can. So, one of the first things we did was build a tool called AI Pete. We shorten our name to AIP, so it's a play on that. But AI Pete was a platform that allows us to connect and surface information more quickly in the business. And that's been built up and developed over the years. We've recently integrated ChatGPT into it. And it's got various different elements, but the idea is that we want to make sure that every hour that we spend on a project is as effective as possible, and effectively we can do more with that time. So we use technology to unlock more value. So again, that then drives into performance, and if the performance is good, then we get more budget, and it kind of rolls on from there.
And that's a piece of technology that you've bespoked developed internally, and that's an internal for your efficiency rather than something that the customer would actually use, is it?
Yeah, and some clients will get access to it for like reporting. They have an access to a proportion of AIP, which gives automated insights and automated reports, which saves time, because you don't really want your team spending lots of time pulling together data and pulling together a report when they could be actually optimizing the account and making the performance work much harder. So one of the things, coming back to the kind of why we set the agency up, is traditional agencies didn't have the right mix of talent. So, we set the business built around media, creative and technology. We wanted those three types of people in the room. I wanted, a creative who, could sit there with a developer and a data scientist. So one of the things we did on the media side is, 50% of our team come from STEM backgrounds and computer science backgrounds.
Okay.
So we've got developers who have left a developer role and moved into a media buying role. And what that means is we just have a tech culture built in. So we're always looking for ways we can use technology to automate things. And sometimes those things turn into real world products. So we released a product last year. It's a platform called SearchShare.io. It's for brands and for agencies to help them measure their market share through using search data, which is fantastic. It's a really cost-effective way to understand how you're doing against your competitors or how you're doing against the market. And it's for any brand in any sector can get value out of it.
Okay.
And that started off as an internal spreadsheet, effectively, a tool, a process we were using. We were getting more and more value out of it. We built a process and a platform for us to use it more effectively in-house. And then let's not just keep it in-house. Let's let the world use it and put it out there. And so that's the kind of nature that we take with technology and how it drives the way we work.
I love that. And that's very clear, I think, for anybody listening to see where you're deriving your competitive advantage from. From that talent pool that you've got, the technology focus that you've got that is driving both the offer, you're creating a great offer for your clients because you're bringing in technology to provide better information, that transparency and stuff as well, but as well as driving your internal efficiencies and giving you a lower cost base, which ought to mean that you're able to make superior profits at the same sort of pricing as maybe your competitors are making. So very, very clear. What about the positioning? What about your ideal clients? Are you targeting particular sectors or sizes? How do you go about deciding what your ideal client looks like?
Yes. So there's a couple of ways. We do work with specific sectors. So, around our largest sector would be within the education space. So we work with a number of universities and education and learning based clients. So they're not all higher education, but and that's a really fulfilling market to work in. It's a really interesting market, actually, education, because the model for learning for everybody is changing. I think it used to be that you basically learn for the first 20 to 25 years of your life, and that's your knowledge, and then you go into work and you work and you retire. But actually now, like if you look at the length of time people stay in jobs, you might start your own business, you might switch careers. Actually, it's now really got to look at lifelong learning.
Yep.
So that's a really interesting space, and education changed significantly with COVID and the move to online. That accelerated online learning a lot. So we do a lot of work there, but we also work across sectors. So we work with big brands like Mars Pet Care, Best Western Hotels, and smaller brands as well. So it's a mixture. The most important thing for us is twofold. Can we have a material impact on their business?
Yeah.
Which isn't always the case. It's not, that not every agency is right for every client or every solution. So, but it's important for us because if we don't, if we take on a project where we don't think we can have a material impact, then we're doing them a disservice. They should find an alternative. And it's not good for our reputation as well. We don't want to do projects that don't work.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. And the second one is around, the individual teams as well, because you're working with people at the end of the day. And really, we're looking for that possibilist spirit in the brand side, the client side as well.
Yeah.
So generally, people who choose to work with us will share that vision, I think, for being a possibilist and affecting positive change and seeing the opportunities without limit. And sometimes brands are more conservative than that, and so we're not the right agency for those types of brands. So it's important, I think, when we start talking to prospective clients, we always qualify that out to make sure that it's a partnership that will work.
Excellent. So take us back to when you and Mark decided to set the business up and go into your garden shed with your roses. What led you to that point? What made you think, let's start a business together?
Yes, it's a good question. It's like what I didn't realise is that it was effectively getting married to Mark as well. So I'm married to my wife, married to Mark, because you don't really realise how much time you spend together, and we finish each other's sentences. But I've been fortunate enough to work at some amazing agencies. So I spent 9 or 10 years at a company called iCrossing, which was fantastic, and then I went to an agency called VCCP, which is one of the best agencies in the world. And so, which was brilliant. So I get to work on amazing brands and projects, worked across 23 countries for Apple, worked with L'Oreal, Lego, all sorts of different brands. So, which was great. But what actually happened is my wife and I, we got married, and we went traveling for our honeymoon. So we'd always put it off. So we took a year out, and that was our honeymoon. So we had a year long honeymoon. And it was quite, at the time, to be honest, like I've always been I self-actualized through my success at work and my role at work. And without my career, it's kind of like, well, who am I and what am I doing? And so I was quite scared, actually, because I was like, what will I have? Like, am I interesting? Do I have much going on beyond my job? And also, will I ever get a job?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we went and did it. And halfway through, I got offered this job at BCCP, and I got offered the job. My first interview was at the bottom of a volcano in Costa Rica. And my last interview was in Chile. And I got offered the job on Copacabana Beach in Rio.
Brilliant.
At the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
And it was a great job and wonderful agency and all of that. And so that's where this idea of anything is possible came about. And what I realised is that coming back to, like, you make excuses. And I've always wanted to run my own business. And like the lesson I got from taking that leap is that actually, we quit our jobs and we went travelling. We got a great job out of it. It was brilliant. It was the best time we've ever had. I should have done it earlier, but I made excuses, So anyway, so I went into the job. But there was that nagging thing. It's like, actually, I do want to do this myself. And I went for lunch with someone who I really trusted and still do. And I said, in 5 years' time, I'm going to set my own agency. And he was very smart and said, there's no way you're going to last 5 years because you know that already. I bet you do it within 2. And that's what transpired, because if any kind of challenge or frustration that came along, I was like, actually, no, I want to do this, and you're increasingly seeing how you can affect change, and that's what I did. So my wife was really supportive. I said, I'm going to do this, and don't worry, it'll all be fine. And it has been, but I might have been slightly over optimistic in the time frames when I said that to my wife. It's taken a wee bit longer.
Where did Mark come into the equation?
Yeah, so Mark and I worked together at iCrossing. So we used to work together on the Apple account. He was the account guy and I was the media guy, and we always had a really good working relationship. And the thing, you've got to be out, like, getting married at work is important because you want to understand where you don't want to be too much of an overlapping then. You don't want to be doing the same things. You want to complement each other, and you want to be able to have honest conversations and add value to each other, and we do that really, really well, which has been very fortunate, and it's been a joy.
So how did you define that from the beginning? How did you decide which roles you're each going to take on?
I think it was just quite natural. I think we're quite different. It was, Mark kind of runs the commercial side of the business and the client side, and I kind of lead the strategy and the overall kind of business direction, and that fits us. We both work on clients as well, and we have good relationships with our clients, but we naturally fell into it. But we'd worked together for so long that it kind of was an extension of that. Sometimes, when I talk to people about starting businesses, I admire people who start businesses that they've never done that thing before. Because I'm like, wow, that's like really doing something new. The difference, I think, for myself is that, well, I'm kind of doing what I did at a previous organisation, just doing it for ourselves. So, we were always, quite confident in terms of our ability to do that well, and to find processes. And we worked at good agencies who had lots of good things that we could learn from, and also some things that we could improve on. So we were able to, take all of the good bits and not take any of the bad bits and affect that. So it kind of was a very comfortable and easy kind of working relationship from the start.
Great. So take us through some of the key milestones then from that point. You already mentioned you started off in the shed, but fairly quickly, sounds like you got on to the NatWest Accelerator. You mentioned that already as one of the milestones. So take us through some of those key stepping stones, if you like, along your journey so far. Yeah,
there's one which is when we made our first hire. So Rob, he's still with us. He's fantastic. Brilliant part of the team. And so when it was just Mark and I, we lived off our savings for the first probably 18 months, really. We didn't get paid. And you're doing projects, but you're trying to build up some money in the business and, just trying to get some comfort, really.
Yeah.
And then the savings start to whittle down, and you're like, no, we actually have to start getting paid. But even then, it was, well, if we had a bad month, if we didn't win a client, it's not the end of the world. But when you make your first hire, it's sure you can pay them, right? It's a different kettle of fish.
Absolutely.
And so we got an inbound lead from a Swiss billionaire. He was a banker. And he, from a really wealthy family background, I think he was in pharmaceuticals or something like that. He had a side project, which is this supplements brand, really nice supplements brand. And anyway, we did this whole pitch, and it was going to be our largest project and client, significant enough for us to press the button on hiring our first employee. But the contract negotiations were going on, and from where we kind of started, there was creep, like trying to add more in and take more bud fee away. So you had this double problem, right, where we were trying to get to do more work for less money. Yeah. And it kept going and kept going, and we didn't like how that was going, and we didn't like how he was behaving in it as well. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't really want to do this. And there was a comment that was like, look, you just need to accept this because you need us. You're a small agency, you need our work. This was on the Friday, and he still hadn't signed the contract, and Rob was starting on the Monday. So I phoned Mark, and I said, you know what? Like, I know it's a decent sized project, but I don't really want to do it. It doesn't feel right. And Mark said to me, thank God you said that, because I've been thinking that as well. We said no. So we went back to him and said, thanks, but no thanks. Go and find another agency. And we got like a sweary email back. And then Rob joined on the Monday. Rob had no idea about this. And it was, I was like, oh no. Like, we were like, it wasn't like hand to mouth. We were okay. But obviously that was our thing. And so I remember calling my wife, feeling sick. I was calling and saying, I feel just sick. Rob started, and we've not got that piece of work, and we've got to make sure, there's not too much in the pipeline. And she's like, don't worry, it'll be all right. By the Thursday...
I like the sound of your wife. She's very, very supportive.
Yeah, no, she is. Yeah, she's a hero. But by the Thursday, we were at the Watermit, and through another contact, Natalie, who works with us now as well, we got a referral into a client, and we still work with them now. So we won that piece of business. And so they're our longest standing client now, a really great client that we love to work with. And it all came through. And I mean, that was kind of the major thing. Like, it worked out. But the most important thing was that you've got to You've got to have your integrity. And when you're running your own business, you make decisions. You're the one making the decision. And we made that decision, and it was the right decision. Because if we'd won, if we'd won that account, we wouldn't have won the other accounts. We'd have had 2 accounts, but that account would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
It would have almost certainly impacted how successful we would have been on the other account. And so therefore, maybe we wouldn't be working with them, So, and that's the thing, I don't want to have another agency, which is just a big agency that works with, projects that aren't healthy for us as a business and our team. And so that was like the kind of, that always sticks in our minds, it's like we had the fear, but we're really pleased to be stuck to that.
Because that takes balls, and it's often very, very difficult decision for an entrepreneur, business owner to make, to turn down what looks like it could be a big piece of work. Other than your wife being very supportive, what gave you the confidence, do you think, between you and Mark to do that, especially given that you got Rob about to turn up?
I think it's when you look with hindsight, you can always apply, like you can post-rationalize it, can't you? I think we always felt things would be okay because we know we were creating a good business, and it felt so uncomfortable that it wasn't that difficult to have the confidence. But what I would say is, early on when you're starting a business, confidence is so important, because if you're overly confident, you make bad decisions. But also, if you're overly conservative, you end up not doing anything, and that limits the business, right?
Yeah.
So we had an advisor come on quite early with us, and he said to us, make the decision like you've got £1 million in the bank, because it's still the right decision. Except if you have £1 million in the bank, you're not going to you're only going to make the decision because it's the right decision to make, but you're worried because the money you're giving up, is significant at the time. If you have £1 million in the bank, it's not significant. And the fact is, his advice there is, once you take that stress level away, you make better decisions because you're making the right decision for the business. And so we've tried to do that. It's not always easy because there's various pressures, but actually,
you don't actually have £1 million in the bank. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We obviously didn't. But if you kind of can get your head around that you haven't, and just be assured it does help. So that's that's my post-rationalized assessment of it. I think actually in the moment it felt so wrong that it was actually quite easy. Yeah,
and that'll come back to the values, which even if you hadn't defined all of those values right from the beginning, but the things that you were talking about looking to be able to make a material impact with a client, but also a team that you want to work with, your gut feel, even if you weren't articulating it that way, would have been that we might not have either of these things with this client, but particularly the team. So you felt it was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. So that was a key milestone, that first hire. Thank you for that. And what from there? So there's now the 3 of you. What are some of the big steps?
So there's the 3 of us. So the next thing, so we're members of a thing called BEMA, which is the British Interactive Media Association. I think that's correct. And so they are a professional organisation similar to the IPA that helps creative businesses to maintain standards, learning, that sort of stuff. And as part of that, we had startup membership. As part of that, we got a free entry into their awards.
Oh, yeah.
And we wouldn't have entered any awards at that time because we felt it was too soon. We were too young. And we've won awards in the past for our work at other agencies, and we know it's a really good tool to add credibility. Mm-hmm. And it's great to do great work and be recognised for it. But anyway, we had the free entry, and these things can cost quite a lot of money to enter awards when you take into account everything. So we're like, well, why not enter it? So we entered it and we got shortlisted, and we ended up winning, which was fantastic. So this was for a project we did with a brand called Wise Driving. And we were up against Lynx, the deodorant, Anthony Joshua, and I can't remember, but real big brands and big agencies, and there was us. Yeah. And the campaign, we're really proud of it. It was, basically Wise Driving is a car insurance brand for telematic car insurance.
Okay.
So, which is where you have like a black box driving, and that's really good for young drivers who typically get penalised because of their age. The assumption is you're young, so you're a bad driver, but that's not true of everyone. So if you drive safely, your policy is cheaper.
Yeah.
Reckless, it goes up. But our budget for the year was the same amount of media that, say, somebody like Compare the Market spends in a day. So we didn't have, much budget to play with, and we couldn't buy a TV ad, and we couldn't even buy like the phrase car insurance on Google Ads because that costs, 40 CPC. So we had to find a way to cut through. So what we did is you're able to access driving test data from the government, from the DVSA, and download it. So we downloaded 8 years worth of driving test pass rate data for every test centre in the UK. Mm-hmm. And we analysed the test centres that had the highest pass rates and when. And then we set up hyper-targeted advertising around those test centres. And so Snapchat was our core platform, because what happens is, the insight is that when a young driver, we were targeting 17-year-old drivers, this was before TikTok, Snapchat's their preferred platform. So you pass your test. What happens when your driving test is the driving instructor hands you the scoring thing. And so you get given that piece of paper, which tells you how many minors you got, and so you then take a photo of yourself with the paper and you send it to your friends and family. Yeah. And see, like, I passed, and you can imagine that moment. But Snapchat was the platform for that. So what we did is we sponsored ads on that. So you'd log into Snapchat, and the first thing you would see is a filter, which is congratulations on passing your test, with Wise Driving branding. So people take those photos, and those photos typically got shared to like 10 different people. So that was our campaign, and it worked really, really well because it unlocked, it increased their brand awareness by 60%. So there's huge numbers, which is what led to the performance. And the idea was taking a positivist approach to solving that.
Yeah, I love it.
We had no budget, so we had to find a different way to cut through. So that was a big moment for us, because we got the award and that got us noticed. And the more we built our reputation, the more we get inbound work from different brands, and the more credibility we had to speak to brands.
Very good. Okay, so that raised your profile hugely by doing that. Super. So, a couple of really key milestones there. At some point, you must have you're taking on people. You started off with Rob, but you've got 50 now. So, how have you managed to keep that culture going whilst also managing to keep control of what people need to be doing within the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought it'd be, you think when you're starting, once we're at 50 people and X amount of revenue, it's all going to be, I'll just be able to take a step back, and it's easy. Yeah. It's just different challenges. With the growth, so we hired quite aggressively over lockdown. So we made a strategic decision. It was we looked at the market, and we saw that there would never be like the availability of great talent as there was in lockdown, because everyone was putting people on furlough and making people redundant. So actually, if you take that as an opportunity and you invest in people, you get great people more easily. So that was the key strategy that paid off for us, because we were able to recruit. So we recruited around 20 people over lockdown. And that leveled up our capability more quickly as an agency. So we were able to do better work and win more business. And so it went on. So that was really, really key for us. But there were challenges with that, because you're recruiting remotely, which we were never geared up to do. We've got an anywhere as possible policy, so you can work anywhere, but not fully remote. And so that was really difficult, recruiting and onboarding people when they're everywhere. We hadn't met. So that's important for culture, because if you, I guess our cultural systems, they weren't even that defined really. We had them in my head, and people, when we all sit around a room in a room, it's easy to understand culture. When everyone's in their bedrooms or spare rooms or whatever, it's much harder. So once we kind of started coming back, that's when we started to realize, no, we need to invest in like the the parts of the business as you grow up, so people and culture, HR, that sort of thing. And because when you're growing quickly, you basically, you invest in areas which you then sell, it's the product areas and stuff like that. Then you have to understand, well, we need the grown up business parts, finance, marketing, HR, we call it people and culture. So Deshi, she leads our people and culture. It's a fantastic part of the business. Helps us to evolve what it is to be here and help people develop. So, over the last few years, we're really proud, but we've got CPD Gold accreditation, which is reflects our investment in continuous professional development.
Yeah.
So that's good. We just retained that for the second year. I think we're up for some culture awards, which are coming up in the next few weeks, which hopefully, we're delighted to be shortlisted for that. So we invest a lot in learning and development and that side of the business, because it helps us to develop what this culture is, because it's not a static thing. It has to be driven by the organisation.
Yeah.
With something like people and culture, one of the questions I always had was, at what point, how many people do you need before you hire someone like that? We probably left it a wee bit too late, but it's one of those things which, until they're in the business, you don't realise you necessarily need it.
Right.
It's been a real positive thing once we brought Deshi in.
Great. So what does your management structure look like with those 50 people? How are you actually carving it up, if you like, and controlling it?
Yes, we've got a senior leadership team that they effectively own separate parts of the business. So client planning, and we split ourselves into client and craft. So the craft part of the business is media, creative, and tech, and then you've got the client interface. So we've got leaders for all of those parts. So client leader, media, creative, technology leader, and we've also got planning and data science.
Okay.
That's a really key part of growing up as an organisation, is bringing those roles in, getting the right people in allowing people to develop as well. So, often it's about giving people the autonomy and the opportunity to do something that they may not have done before, which is exciting, but also you need to give them the platform for them to succeed. So making sure that they've got, the time and the platform to move into that role, because, often it's easy to, you can promote people who are good at a particular job and you put them into a different role and assume they'll just naturally fit into that. And actually this can be a very different role. So it's helping that. And that's the key thing. So when we started the business, we had a plan, which was start up, skill up, scale up, and grow up. And that plan goes over, it was 7 years to start with, but COVID, it kind of extended that a wee bit. So the startup phase was just, all hands to pump and trying to work out what we're doing. And then the skill up phase is getting the right people on board. And so we've just recently come out of that, where, big hiring, making sure we're getting the right roles on place, building capacity and capability.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're moving into scale up, which is where we're looking to expand, launch offices in international markets, that sort of thing. And then at that point, we'll move into grow up, which is when we'll be looking to optimize for margin and be more kind of efficient and effective in those areas. So, we're really pleased with kind of the team that we have in place. We've got some great people, people that we've worked with in the past, people we haven't, all sorts of different perspectives. There's a really kind of a book which I've forgotten the name of the book. Can't believe I've forgotten the name of the book. It's because I'm on the podcast. It's like, I need to find it. It's here somewhere anyway. But basically, I'll send it afterwards. The idea is that diverse perspectives enables a collective intelligence.
Right.
So we try to make sure we've got different people from different backgrounds in the organisation that help us to lead it, so that it's not just a singular perspective.
Yeah, brilliant. Good, and that chimes very much.
Rebel Ideas, that's the book.
What's it called?
Rebel Ideas by Matthew Said.
Brilliant. Good. No, well, that chimes very much with our approach, actually, in that we do a lot of sort of peer groups, mastermind type groups.
Yeah.
We call them smart boards, but largely for that sort of reason, getting that diversity of opinion, perspective, so you don't end up with your own biases and just reinforcing those. And yeah, very good. Excellent. Okay, so you got a lot right over that time. Anything you'd point to where you might do differently with a bit of hindsight?
Well, lots. And I think that's, it's what's interesting. I think it's naturally, when you don't have anything, you only see beauty, and when you've got something, you see its flaws, right? So as soon as you build something, you can see how you can be better. So we're really proud of it, but I think we would have established our culture more clearly early on, because I think, like you mentioned it, but when you bring new people in and new ideas, what happens is culture organically establishes itself.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to know what you're all about when there's 5 of you around a table. But when there's 50 of you, or when you're split over locations, if it's not written down, like you asked the question, how do you hold yourself to account? What is good behavior and bad behavior in terms of the nuance areas, within a business? And what you don't want to do is allow culture, I think, to be organic. Not that you want to force it, but, because you can have negative elements of that culture established. So I think we would do that. I think, in terms of, it's not really anything we could affect, but I would have loved to, like the COVID years, I'd have loved to have had more time together as a business, because it was remote. That was difficult. And it's, we operate a hybrid policy, but the impact of being in the same room in a young organisation is it's really positive. You get great ideas and people spark at each other. And I would have loved to have that opportunity. And I wonder, where would we have been? We made some interesting tech investments and learnings early on, which I think you just have to. You have to learn, but nothing overly disastrous. So we're always looking to improve. But the thing is, rather than looking back, I think it's more a case of take that lesson and go, right, how would we impact that for the next opportunity?
Yeah.
So less, what would we change, and more, let's hopefully approach decisions slightly differently in the future.
Okay. Great, good. So what's the legacy that you want to leave, Sam?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't want to create just any other agency. The thing that scares me is building a big agency that's just like another agency that I've either worked at or haven't worked at. I want to create a beautiful business. Yeah. I want it to be something where everyone does their best work. It's a great culture. It should be the hardest and most rewarding job people have, being here, because doing hard things means you're doing something satisfying. When you achieve it, that's what life's about. And you don't want jobs that are hard and not rewarding. That's like labour. Don't do that very long. But something that's hard and rewarding, they're the moments you remember. Yeah. You look at life, and so I want the work that we do here to be the best work we've ever done. And where that takes us, we'll see. But that's the focus.
Brilliant. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating, and I've still got loads of questions I could ask you, but I know we're running out of time. So are you up for a couple of quick fire questions before we close?
Yeah. Okay.
Great. So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Remember that anything is possible, because it took me until 30 odd to go back to that space. So
Brilliant. You've already mentioned one book. Any other books or podcasts that you'd recommend?
So Good Strategy, Bad Strategy is an excellent book. I'd really recommend that. I've recently finished it. It's great because it goes into like the academia of strategy, but it also brings it to life in real world examples, which I think makes it quite accessible. And so I find, for me, is just in terms of, I find it hard to find the time to read, so I listen to it on Audible, which is something that I think it's enabled me to consume much more knowledge because I can do it walking into work. So, but it has affected my podcast listening because I'm kind of splitting the two.
All right, good. So the next question was going to be apps you made the most difference to you. Would Audible would be one of those by the sounds of it?
Yes, Audible, OS Maps for walking is really good to get out in the South Downs.
Great. So who do you look up to? Who's had the most influence on you?
So from a career-wise, there was a client I had at Apple, his name's Simon Thompson. He was inspirational. He made me better. Didn't work for a huge amount of time. He now runs the Royal Mail, actually, but he was challenging, direct, but fair, and that's something that I've tried to keep up and to do. Yeah. And I think they're good traits to have generally, but particularly in business. Great,
good stuff. And obviously, you're in the marketing world. It'd be remiss for me not to ask. But I like to ask everybody, what's their most successful lead generation strategy or tactic?
So for us, awards. Okay. So that first award we won, and then we're like, oh, this is good. But doing great work leads to the awards. So we've won, I think, over 30 awards now, and we have clients, leads coming to us saying, we saw that award, we've seen you won this. So that's been really, really good for us.
Brilliant. Good. Well, thank you very much indeed, Sam, for being on Scale Up Radio today. If people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Anything Is Possible, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, brilliant. So our website is aip.media. So you can find us there. My email is sam@aip.media. And if anyone wants, I mentioned it earlier, but the platform SearchShare that we've got, if anyone wants to have a trial of that or would like to take that out, I can get you an exclusive discount code for Scale Up Radio listeners. So you can get in touch and I can arrange that so you can get some money off.
Brilliant. So just mention that you heard it first on Scale Up Radio when they contact you. Brilliant. And how do we spell that? How do we spell that product?
Searchshare.io.
Searchshare.io. Brilliant. Well, Sam, thank you very much indeed for being my guest today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kevin.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.